All right. Good evening, folks. I'm going to pass it directly over to our Vice Chair, Jay, to welcome us this evening, and then we have a packed agenda. So, Jay.
Great. Thank you guys so much. I apologize for not being on camera. I am on the phone, but I'm very excited to welcome everybody to our full community committee meeting. Like Nick said, we have a packed agenda. There are a few action items when we get to our task force reports. So please, we will need some motions from folks, and Eric will help facilitate that. So be on the lookout. I'm really excited to hear from our legacy committee about some of the amazing work going on there, and then the art that is taking place in the park. If you haven't been able to see some of that stuff, I highly recommend you get out to the park soon to take a look at it and take advantage of this awesome fall weather we have. So I will pass it back over to Nick so that we can jump right into our work and get going. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Shauna is on vacation this week, so she sends her regrets, but well earned for her, so we're happy. And she will join us at our next meeting. I actually want to start today with an introduction before we approve the minutes. We have a new staff member on the city side. His name is Brody Abbott. He's joining us from across the country. He has made the moves, actually currently in the process of making the move. So Brody, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the committee. He's going to be stepping in a management role for this work. But Brody, if you want to just kind of share some of your responsibilities and background to the committee, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Good evening, everybody. My name is Brody Abbott. As Nick said, I'm from Portland, Oregon. I spent most of my time on the West Coast. My background is in criminal justice and urban planning. And I've spent the last 5 years of my life work-wise working for nonprofits that focus on sustainability and working for our local government, Metro, which pretty much oversees 3 counties within the Portland Metro region. And I was a senior planner there. And I'm moving into this role, sort of as a Swiss Army knife, wanting to provide capacity to the team, while also providing some of the sort of skills and things that I've done in my past to help amplify the team and really implement this master plan. And so I'm just happy to be here, happy to meet you all, and look forward to convening in these meetings, because I will be stepping in and helping Nick, as he said, with a lot of this as well. So.
Awesome, Brody, welcome. Brody's been with us for a couple weeks now and is getting quickly up to speed. So very happy you're here and happy for the help, absolutely. I'm going to start sharing my screen and ask Eric if we're ready to approve the minutes from our last meeting.
All right, let's approve the minutes. I hope everyone's having a great day. Meeting minutes from our last meeting were uploaded to our SharePoint site for your review. We're going to approve the minutes, but before we do that, are there any questions or concerns from the committee? Okay, so we're going to move forward with approving the minutes. To simplify this, we're going to ask if there are any committee members who do not wish to approve the minutes. Okay, sounds like everyone wants to approve the minutes, so that they're approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. To start our evening off, we have a couple special presentations, 2 focused on art and art opportunities, and an exhibit that's currently here, Wings of the City, and also in some planning and advanced work for the Plaza Play project, and some public art included in that. So I'm gonna actually start it off before I pass it over to a member of our art staff. We have an exhibit, if you have not heard it, the city is called Wings of the City. This is a traveling exhibit. The artist is Jorge Marin. Excuse me, I'm gonna pull my notes up here. And we are very privileged to have an international renowned traveling exhibit that has been making its way from around the world since 2013. The collection is 9 bronze sculptures. They are larger than life. A number of them are winged. A number of them are balanced in what is here listed acrobatic poses. We have arranged them with the help of our planning team and also our arts staff at the city across the front of the park in the Grove landscape primarily. We have a path that has been created. You can see here our key map, but moving from 1 to 9 or 9 to 1. And we've also created some temporary walking paths to connect all 9 statues. And each statue has some signage associated with it and has been positioned either with a view into trees around it or into the downtown area. And we had an opening ceremony. This was a press event that happened, I believe, this past Thursday. And we had members of this event was sponsored by the Consulate General of Mexico in Raleigh. And we had the Consulate General who was here giving this presentation and welcoming us. We also had the First Lady of North Carolina, the Mayor, Janet with the Conservancy, and also our head, our presenting sponsor, Town Bank, that were part of our opening ceremonies, followed by a reception at the chapel. We had planned for an open streets event for the public that Saturday, which unfortunately was canceled for rain and will be rescheduled. We were having a number of food trucks. We were shutting down the path for walking pedestrians only. Adding a couple of images, I will say that I have Dix Park tagged in my social media, and I see these come through all of the time on my entire feed, especially the one on the left, which is the primary one. The view to downtown is incredible. But I encourage all of you, if you've not been out there, to see these statues. They are unique, they're special, they're something that has not happened at the park before, and we're very excited in our partnerships with our sponsors and for what they bring to the community. I was making the comment, this is the same area we had our temporary pop-up disc golf course. So that shows the range of how this public space can be used in the different communities and services it can provide. With that, I'd like to introduce Kelly Mcshesson. She's the Director of Public Arts for the City of Raleigh. She is here on behalf of the Play Plaza Project and Public Art, and I'm going to ask her to share her screen and give an overview of this project and how art is being incorporated in the design.
Thank you so much, Nick, and thanks for introducing Wings of the City. I know that has been extremely popular with a lot of people. We've seen great images of people taking selfies with the wings too, so it's definitely worth going out and seeing. I will go ahead and share my screen. Get this presentation up, just bear with me one moment. Okay, so this is a brief presentation to go over some of the conceptual design development that the artists Johnny Lee Chapman, Mark Riegelmann, and Donald Lipsky have presented so far to us. We just wanted to go ahead and update the committee and give everyone a chance to see what they've been thinking and kind of sketching out on paper. They are very rough designs. They haven't gone through and done a lot of heavy rendering yet, but we did want to come in and present. So far, this is what they have done. They were hired July, so they began starting with a lot of research material. They had a community engagement session online. They've been doing several review sessions with MBVA design team. And you see here a bunch of books. Some of the artists just bought a ton of books about Dix and Raleigh, and also some of the books from artists in the area to begin their research. And then in September, they came down for a site visit. They were able to tour the park, and visit local fabricators like Raleigh Reclaim, and also go to the Core Museum and then view that exhibit and talk with the curators there. And right now they're working in this concept design development phase. So when they came down, some of the things that they took a lot of images for resources, but some of the things they were really attracted to were the facilities, the textures, the architecture, entrances, light, some of the openings that they found in some of the buildings were really inspirational to them. And again, materials. At the Core Museum, they were able to find some of the artwork that some of the patients did. They found those really inspiring as well. And again, more examples of the artwork and just overall the exhibition put together by Core Museum. I will start with Mark Riegelmann. Mark Riegelmann has produced 3 concept designs to look at. The first one is called Panorama. In the 1860s, everything from books, photos, magic lanterns, and a bowling alley were introduced to patients of the hospital to calm and stimulate These entertainments coupled with an attractive walks and beautiful landscapes intended to soothe this disordered mind, quote. During that same period, traveling entertainers were passing through Raleigh regularly, sharing some of the earliest produced panoramas. This documentation of distant places submerged viewers in a new environment. The concept highlights the unique ways people were being entertained by creating a mirrored 360-degree experience that highlights visitors and the surrounding environment. He's referencing some of the panoramas he could find of Durham above and St. Mary's below. So this concept is the 360-degree experience that would be polished stainless steel silhouettes of different different silhouettes, different sizes. They'd have a mirrored effect in a circle with a few openings so that people could come in and they could connect the circle together. They can also go in and see their own reflection. Another view for you so you can see how the reflection might work within the mirrored pieces. In addition to that, you also get this wonderful play with light and shadow. The second concept, carved from oak. Commonly referenced as a city carved from oak, Raleigh carries with it an inherent intimacy with nature that is unique to the site. In the original design of the hospital's grounds, this intimacy was reinforced by encouraging a strong connection with nature so that patients had plenty of opportunities for the calmness and relaxation nature provides. Carved from oak combines this nature-centric history with the unique nature-centric healing approach found at the hospital to create a meditative public space. Also within this, he's referencing a little bit of a cathedral structure. So the idea for people to go in to interact with it, to look up and be inspired. So this would be a massive concept of 35, 22-foot vertical slices of weathering steel. So maybe steel that's meant to weather over time. And that would create somewhat of a stump silhouette. It would also have a lot of good play with light and shadow as well. He's also presented the idea that it could be, instead of in corten steel, it could be in sandblasted stainless steel, which could have more of a reflective appearance. And therefore the rating slices allow for a bold singular artwork that also offers moments of transparency and reflective nature. Concept 3, he's calling Meadow of the Deer. So during his research, he came across the back of the city of the Raleigh's double-sided civic flag. While the vertical candy cane striping is consistent on the back, it also contains the modified coat of arms of Sir Walter Raleigh, whom the city of Raleigh is named after. He was struck by the stoic stag that stood upon the red and silver shield in the center of the flag. And after some additional research, he discovered that the name Raleigh is derived from two Old English words, Ra and Lee, meaning meadow of the deer. This has inspired his oversized concept. So you'll see the flag with a deer. He was also inspired by the artwork, the linear drawings of the artists and of the patients, but also their cross-stitching and the X pattern work that's in the cross-stitching of some of their artwork. So this was an example of a corten steel deer that could be approximately 12 feet tall, placed in a casual location, encouraging visitors to continue to explore the park grounds. And just as you see kind of from different vantage points, this linear quality of the weathering steel construction will allow the deer to blend into the environment and then solidify as visitors move around the artwork. Starting with an X in the center, the lines radiate outward. So that X is again referencing the cross stitch patterns from the artwork seen from the patients. Next, we go into Johnny Lee Chapman's concepts. He also has produced a few concepts for us to look at. I did want to start with this writing that he did for us. Dix Park is a place where everybody should feel safe to be themselves. Both nature and human commune in peace, a space for joy and shouts and silent musings on the benches, where wishing fountains refresh youthful spirits and weathered bones find love again. The sun gives light to the leaves and the lives of those with roots settled in a city where the legacy is written by the community. So one of his first concepts would be to do some sort of poem in neon, and it could be at the entry of the park, the exit of the park, or even, you know, at the entrance of a sensory maze, for example. He's using this piece I link later as an example of how it might look at night and in daytime. And that also goes into his concept of doing kind of a poetry search or a poem or word search. And here you have some examples of ways that a word or poetry or icons can be embedded in the environment. He's focusing more on how to enhance what is already being designed. So for example, he could do small metal leaves with poems in them or words in them that are embedded in the concrete. And you see here that as an example of the metal fish that I could find. He could also do small poems in medallions, and of course use words and phrases in metal. He's been working on a sample poem, and this is a little snippet that he's been working on. You are here to witness another day in the life, a day in Raleigh, haven on a hill, where heritage breathes like a fountain and the foundations provide common ground to the hill kids of all generations. We are deeply rooted, always reaching, a community cultivated with vitality, with a legacy that is a commitment to always change like the seasons. And from that, he's pulled out some words that could be focused on throughout the park, like crossroads, cultivate connection, witness, hill kids, heritage, common ground, can't bear fruit without roots. These are some other options he's been thinking of how he could embed these little pieces of a poem into the site. It could be a poem inside a mosaic. He could also engrave words and poems into some of the natural environments, like such as the natural stones that might be in the stormwater wetland area or potentially waterfall. And he is working with the MVVA team to find out where some of these areas are that will occur naturally, where he can spread the words and phrases throughout. And then he'd love to find a location where the entire poem can be on view too. So it's a little bit of a chance for people to interact and play and find the words and throughout the park. Next, Donald Lipsky. He is shown here with he has a series of work that is focused on creating works that look like trees, trees and shapes that they would not naturally be in. That's part of his studio practice. So he thought about this in large scale for the park, thinking about how Raleigh feels about its trees and how to kind of create a playful experience for the park that includes that. So he was looking at it in terms of how could he make this experience into a bench or something more interactive. He was also thinking about ways, he's collaborating with Johnny Lee Chapman in ways that Johnny Lee Chapman could apply words or words of inspiration or poetry into the piece. So he started thinking about trees that are hand carved by people over time. And from that, he came up with this thought of doing this tree ring sculpture and also a bench that people can climb in and out of, be a part of, and have words that would be written on it in this style, like they've been engraved into the wood. He has brilliant words here. It's just a placeholder, while Johnny Lee Chapman would be working on what those words might be. And then his last idea, he started, after they toured the park, they also looked in the cemetery, and he was really taken aback by this one monument in the background that you see. Most of the tombstones are in the ground, but this one was a really interesting piece that stood up, and it was the Woodman of the World Memorial in Dix Park. And it looks like a tree, a cut tree in marble. So with that, he kind of took the concept and made it into a larger scale, still in his style, and then kept the plaque the same. And Johnny Lee Chapman would be deciding the words or poems that would go onto the plaque. And this is just another version without the top being tied. Okay. So those are the the concept design directions of the 3 artists so far. They're still working on this, and they'll be presenting to the Public Art and Design Board in a couple weeks. So they'll probably be further along there. If you'd like to see where they go, I would invite you to attend that meeting too. It is a public meeting last Tuesday of the month and at 4:30 p.m.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kelly. And I hope at some point we'll also invite the artists themselves to join us, either on site. We had planned a public event with them that didn't end up happening. I also believe it was a weather cancellation. I want to pass it over to Grayson Mon, the project manager for the Plaza and Play project, to fill in any additional information. I'd love to open it up to the committee for questions on the process and about the artists themselves. But Grayson, what would you like to add that the committee should know about public art in the project?
Thanks, Kelly and Nick. I do feel like Kelly covered all the details that need to be covered. It's been an exciting, thorough, aggressively scheduled process with the artist. It's really great having the 3 different artists. They all bring something different to the table. In particular, it's hard to say in particular because they're also wonderful, but Lee Chapman is new to the public art realm and has a different take on public art, and that he's using spoken word. But I think it's a really nice addition to what we're doing. But yeah, I think we should turn it over and hear from the committee.
I can take questions in the chat, or just folks that are here in the room, if you want to raise your hand or just speak out. Any questions from the group about these 3 artists? Bill.
I think they're fantastic, and I really appreciate, and I think it was Donald and also Johnny Lee. They know each other, I'm going to guess, since they're working together. But as they were each presenting, and it seemed to me that concept of bringing a community together, bringing people together, you might want to have the idea that perhaps they could work with, I believe it was the first artist there that we had, and it was Mark, I believe. And if the 3 could work on a concept together, wouldn't want to force it. I don't know if they know each other, but if they do, it might be very interesting about how you combine the arts of artists for different, how they might work together to bring something, particularly unique and special to each of them into one exhibit. So just a thought, just to throw the idea out. It may not work, but the other 2 are working together. I thought it was fantastic. So maybe 3 could.
Well, this is Myrick, and I liked what I saw, but I have to raise the question as a white man. It looked like they were all white men.
And Mark and Donald are. Johnny Lee Chapman is not. Thank you, though. And Bill, just to respond to your question, I think at the beginning they were talking about if they could collaborate. It's very unusual for so many public artists to collaborate together on one piece. And they did entertain that idea. And in the end, Mark and Johnny Lee Chapman decided to work together. But Johnny Lee Chapman will still have an opportunity to work on his own piece as well, in doing the poetry search if that moves forward. And I think Mark did prefer to do some different ideas, but maybe there are ways to bring it all back together in some ways. So we'll talk about that with them. Thank you.
I'm glad they discussed it. Fantastic.
And Bill, they did not know each other prior to this project, so it is extra special for that reason.
It's hard for artists to come together. I'm married to a musician, so it's a challenge.
Any other notes or questions? In case folks have feedback or preferences, Grayson, is there a channel for that? Or we want to include the public information for the Arts Commission meeting, or can they send information to you? How'd you like to handle that?
It can certainly come to me or Kelly. Kelly, do you want to talk a little bit about how the PADB meeting works with public comment?
Sure. So our PADB is Public Art and Design Board. They're all volunteer members of the community who serve on the board and help they oversee the Percent for Art program, which this project is Percent for Art program. So during their meeting, the artists will each present their concepts. The Public Art and Design Board will give their feedback. They are all kind of experts at the field. They're artists, they're architects, landscape architects, planners, designers, all on board. And they will have a moment for public comment at the end where you'll be able to leave comment there. You can also email me or Grayson too, and I'll put my email in the chat. And the Public Art and Design Board usually will approve design directions to move forward or not. But if they do approve it, they will often approve it with consideration of feedback.
Thanks, Kelly.
Wonderful. Thank you both. Just as a reminder, in terms of where we are in this project, we are on pace to break ground, finish design and break ground next summer, and then on the path to completion for this project in the summer of 2024. And the artwork and the design and the construction of that will happen in that schedule and be installed on site for the opening. So I'd like to move to our next item. We've invited Anne Franklin, chair of the Legacy Committee, to join us this evening to introduce herself, introduce the committee's work. I know we have a number of crossover folks who serve on both the Legacy Committee and on this committee, so will be repeat information for them, but Anne, welcome, and I'll pass it forward to you.
Thank you. A pleasure to be here, and I'm also tickled that I got to hear a little bit about the art possibilities. I find that artists help us, they reveal things that we hadn't thought about. And the whole deer, I'm sure I've seen that deer 1,000 times, but I didn't ever quite think about it. And I loved the carved from oak. Oh my, just some excellent words and images. Thank you for a chance to see that. So I'm Anne Franklin. I serve as chair of the Dix Park Conservancy's Legacy Committee, started by Dr. Maimandi some years ago, and I've been the chair for about 2 years. And our task is to build on the layers of history to create a better future, not just to take a look at what has happened, but how we can help our community advance to do good things, more good things. So those layers of history that we like to attend to are the Native American, first of all, the natural history of the site, the geology, how the water runs, and the soils. The Native Americans present for thousands of years. And you're invited to come to a special program that's going to be on Thursday, the 28th at 7 o'clock at the chapel. And you'll get a little more detail about that. But I want to say, if you've tried to register, we hit a few glitches in the registration. So if you'd like to come, just come. We have room and we'll be delighted to have you there. The Triangle Native American Society has pulled together a very interesting program. And I think you will learn and have a little art and science in the process. So I will plan on that. So the next realm is when it was a plantation. And so we have both, we have descendants of both owners and enslaved people working on our Legacy Committee. And we're interested particularly in the Spring Hill Plantation area, particularly the area around the house. We want to be sure that it is not disturbed in a way that would ruin grave sites or interpretation of that site. As you know, it was a mental asylum started by work done by Dorothea Dix. It was part of a movement. And, you know, we think of movements today, some of them are decades old and some are centuries old. And so this idea that people with mental illness deserved something very different than what they were having, which was being put in jail, put in holes, being locked in rooms, very bad conditions. So we're interested in the history of care at Dorothea Dix Hospital. That's about 150 years of history. And now it's a park. And this park, the place for everyone, will add to the healing capabilities. I liked the ideas from the artists about nature being critical to our well-being. So a few things that we've accomplished. One is that I think we've been responsible for the city becoming a member of the International Sites of Conscience. That's a group, again, focused on not just the past, but on the future. We've been tracking opportunities for native plants, and we're now particularly focused on trees. And so we've been consulting on the Plaza Play plans, and are very aware that many of the trees that you experience at Dix Hill are quite old. They're toward the end of their natural lives. So a plan for gradual replacement of trees will need to come along if we're going to have a legacy of and the pleasure of really large old trees. We're interested, as I know you have a committee, we're interested in how buildings may be used. We're particularly focused on there being some space for the African American Cultural Complex. The city has accepted some artifacts from that organization. It's possible that the state will have a museum and we would collaborate with them, but we know from our master planning process that there's a lot of interest in the community in accommodating an African American cultural complex on site. And the second is that we think it's pretty significant to use some of the space, doesn't need to be a lot, but some of the space for NAMI and its small group support activities. That's the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill. We have a very strong leadership in our community, but what they need is spaces for people to come together in small groups and provide support for one another. The space they need, not very elaborate. A plug for the coffee pot and access to bathrooms. So those are two things we're going to stay focused on, and we would like your help on ringing that bell and making sure that we use some of the space that's available for those purposes, and that we commit to those early on. There are many nonprofits who are interested in space there, and some of them bring resources to the table, but these are two that we think are very closely allied with our master planning process and with the intention for the use of the land. So hang with us, help us out. And now we are actually producing legacy related programs. Our first one, October the 28th on Native Americans, it's called In Plain Sight. And the reason for that is that people don't necessarily see Native Americans. They don't know that they are part of today's life all around them. And so this is a way of bringing a few folks up to date, telling about a new scientific discovery that we're very excited about, and just bringing people together, inviting them to be part of noticing. A lot of times, marginalized people are expected to stay out of view. So In Plain Sight is our way of beginning that, and you'll see more programs coming. But we want you to come. We'd like to have a good audience. So we ask for your help in endorsing our priorities, and we want to add our efforts to yours, however you're working to engage the broader community. We want to be a part of that. We think of all the work we do as an opportunity to stretch the understanding of what Dix Park can offer, and just be generous about what this space can be. So any ways that we can help you work together, that's what we want to do. I'm open for any questions or comments or thoughts. I see Bill and Myrick. I don't know if there's anybody else on the committee, but please fill in where I left things out.
Sarah Reeves.
Oh, Sarah, I can't see everybody, so great.
Danny's online also, I believe.
Okay.
It was.
Sarah's doing yeoman labor. You have to remember our climate change is very evident right here in the middle of North Carolina. It means that trees that were on tree lists even 5-6 years ago are no longer appropriate. They just aren't going to be healthy here. And our nursery people have figured that out pretty quickly. So being sure that our designers and our opportunities for contractors are up to date with the kind of trees that can live to their old age is a critical thing right now.
And thank you for being here and well said. Any questions or comments? We look forward to, as we develop the work plan for this committee, talking with Ann about integrating work and where we can feed off of each other. The Legacy Committee is one of our most engaged and passionate groups, and as with this committee, is extremely important and critical to the work that the project is doing. So, Ann, I appreciate the time. I don't see any other questions or comments. I will be sharing information about the event on the 28th in my recap email from our meeting this evening. So we'll be sending that information out, and there are still some open spots. Yep, Bill, did you have a question? I see that.
Yeah, just a comment. I was impressed with Johnny Lee Chapman and the quote from him that was, "You can't bear fruit without roots." And it seems like this ties in pretty well with the tree concept that we might be looking towards for the park and for the plaza and play. So it'd be fantastic if we could find a way to integrate those together. So
thanks, Bill.
Just like to say that please don't forget the American Indians. I know I know we have the first program next week, but it's titled In Plain Sight, and we're often overlooked, invisible population. And I would just hope that in Dix Park's planning for their park, that you just don't forget that the native people who lived on this land before it was ever Raleigh. We may not know our physical experiences here because there's not a lot written or known about our past, but I would just state that, please don't erase us any further than we've already been erased.
And I'd like to thank Kerry. He's been helping us. We've been planning for this event. And of course, the powwow is following on that weekend, and that's going to be a lot of fun, and you don't want to be sure to miss any of that. So we hope to see every one of you there. Again, if you hit a blank wall when you try to register, come anyway. There's space.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you, Kerry. Trey Roberts, our staff member, will be joining us later on to overview the powwow coming up in a couple of weeks. That is an exciting event along with the In Plain Sight event. So he'll be here to talk about the planning efforts and the program for that. But thank you, Kerry. And Danny, did I see you had did you want to say something? Nope, you're waving me off. Okay. Let's continue on. We're going to shift to the main bulk of our agenda this evening, which is the formal closure of our task forces. If folks remember, this was a additional opportunity for involvement in specific focus areas. We set these out to be operating in the calendar year. They were established early in the spring, and we had our wrap-up meetings here in the last month. We have some formal motions and actions from the committee that will be the first such actions of this group. Just a reminder in terms of where this committee exists, we make recommendations to the Leadership Committee. The Leadership Committee is made up of city leadership and conservancy leadership, and they make recommendations to City Council. So our actions are in the form of recommendations to our Leadership Committee, and we'll get into that. I'm going to pinch hit and give an update as Jay had to step off for our equity task force enclosure here. In summary of the work for the year, this task force did a number of things related to equity work and the consolidation of the work into really a summary. They reviewed work that had occurred through the master planning process and then in the start of implementation. The first thing this committee worked to do was establish and confirm our equity dimensions, which is the areas that equity can be embedded in our park development and planning process. And then we, as a task force, developed a definition for park equity, which was provided at our previous committee meeting along with a narrative. And that narrative worked through how the task force developed a definition for equity, which is, if folks will remember, based on the city's definition of equity. That's what the recommendation from this task force is for a motion this evening, which I'll get to shortly. And what we spent our final task force meeting working through is a potential partners list for continuing equity planning. And these are community groups, these are policy groups, these are advocacy groups that can be involved and have expertise and a stake in any future equity planning. So I want to thank the members of this task force as we finish. We had our kind of closer wrap-up discussion on how this task force can continue to operate. And the recommendation is that we'll continue to function on a review, an equity review basis, stepping in on important moments of decision, important moments of process development, with a really good example of the equity task force's ability to review the early park improvements list and participate in that process. So look forward to continued engagement with this group. We have a really passionate and experienced and knowledgeable group and a good base of knowledge to build off of. But I want to bring to the group and to Eric, who's our leadership today, the recommendation for a motion from the equity task force here.
Okay, the equity task force has recommended a motion to approve the definition of park equity to the leadership committee. We just need a member to make a motion. So do we have a motion from the committee? Anyone can make a motion.
I see.
Go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, I see Carol at the hand. Carol, I don't know if you're able to speak or be on video, but I just want to notice that for Eric.
Yes, I so move.
All right, so Carol is making a motion to approve the definition of park equity for the leadership committee. And now we need a second.
This is Ebony, I second.
All right, Ebony has seconded. What's Nick? Does the motion move? That's
yep.
Good.
So let's ask the committee to for all in favor and then all opposed. And we'll take those down in our meeting minutes.
Perfect. So should we say aye or just?
Yeah, that works. Yeah.
Okay. So everyone who approves this motion to approve the definition of equity, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay. All opposed, say nay. Okay. This motion has passed.
Thank you, Eric. And we'll make sure, Brody, that we have that in the notes. With that, I'm going to move to our second task force report. This is our early park improvements task force. Kate or Shauna would have given this report. Kate is also on vacation this week. So if you haven't seen any emails from her, that is why she'll be back at the start of next week. But I'm happy to give this review. The summary for this work, as a reminder, this was a second phase of early park improvements. Early park improvements are what we call some of the projects that are happening at the park to continue and build momentum. You see, we established two landscape rooms, the Magnolia and the Oak Room, with swings and picnic tables. We have some paths, we have signage that went in. All of these are examples of our phase one early park improvements. And this task force reviewed these, had a visit on site and a tour of the park to physically inspect and experience these. And then they worked through the process of one, developing a needs list. So the full range of needs that the park has. And this included some engagement with the full committee. The subsequent meetings worked to develop criteria to prioritize these needs. And this is where the overlap with the equity task force came in. with our general kind of criteria that we're using in the prioritization, as we know that we have a large needs list, but a budget that won't accommodate all of these at this time. So we're prioritizing. And the final deliverable is this group was a early park improvements phase 2 priority list, with the next steps that this list will be passed forward to both staff, but also to the leadership committee. So this is our second action that was recommended from our early park improvements. As a reminder of this list, the group separated these into 2 main categories, as we found that the funding for these is actually from different sources, so we could separate them out. And again, this was presented in concept at our previous meeting, but presented here, Eric, as the next motion, as a recommended motion from the task force.
Okay, we're going to approve a motion again. So this is going to be the Early Park Improvements Task Force has recommended a motion to approve the priority list of projects for phase 2 early improvement projects to Leadership Committee. We need a motion to send it to the committee. So who would like to move for that motion?
I have a question.
Please, Bill.
It's just sort of a point of order. I know Ann from the Legacy Committee has pointed out some things that they'll be doing with trees, and the African American Museum needs, the NAMI needs for some space, and then the remembrance of Native Americans, not forget that presence. Is this the place, or is it brought up as a separate item where we might also recommend, if we agree, that would also be a recommendation into the Leadership Committee? So it's just a point of information.
Bill, it's a great point. In terms of this list today, the task force work has kind of concluded. So this is our list that we want to present at this time. I think it's totally, we can make recommendations to the Leadership Committee at any point with these. So I will say that this list, the funding for this is in a separate category from how we do our program. So it is a separate funding for this. So it may make sense to continue with this at this point, and then also just include it in future conversations, but understand your point and wanted to integrate them.
That's fine. Good, thanks.
Also, Bill, that's kind of like the early, the park partnerships too. I mean, I think that could be not a deliverable, but some part of the park partnerships of certain partners that we'd like to recommend for sure. So now we're looking for someone to make a motion to move forward this phase 2 list.
I see move.
Sounds good. Who is that?
Cecilia.
Cecilia. Okay, so Cecilia has moved to make a motion to move forward the list to Leadership Committee. I'm looking for a second.
A second.
All right, motion has been moved and seconded. We're going to move to voting now. All those in favor of approving the motion to send this list on to Leadership Committee, say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Okay, the motion has passed that we will be sending this list on to the Leadership Committee.
Thank you, Eric. I'm going to pass it directly back off to you to report out from the partnerships group.
Sounds good. So I was on the Park Partnerships Task Force. The first thing we did was review materials we had to date, 1 with the master plan and 2 with university work with UNC. That work was interesting because they were trying to come up with a system where different values can be weighted as a total score for different types of park partners. And that system is going to help us, come up with definitive scores for different kinds of partners, depending on equity, depending on value, depending on how much money they're bringing to the park, depending on how much infrastructure they need. And it just kind of is a starting point to try to figure out how to score different partners who are interested in being part of the park. So from there, we were talking, and it was kind of very open-ended. So it was everything from, a hot dog stand all the way to talking about long-term museum partners. So we kind of decided to shift to more of the short and midterm partners, just because we had to start somewhere and it was a bit overwhelming to think about the massive scale. That being said, the marbles kind of plan did take kind of priority in the beginning when marbles decided to try to see the feasibility of moving to the park and the plaza and play. So we did run that through the system that was created by UNC and by us to an extent, and it was deemed that they were a good fit, and we kind of ran that up the ladder to the leadership committee as well. We also did a food and concessions focus group. This is where Dean with Rocky Top, Maggie with a place at the table, and our own Nick Neptune with Transfer Food Hall met with our task force, as well as the larger group, to come up with recommendations for food and concessions at the park, and more specifically, the plaza and play. So we looked at the House of Many Porches and how we were going to implement the first phase of food concessionaires at the park. We did get some designs from Dean at Rocky Top for floor plans, as well as other recommendations, and that's ongoing. And it was very valuable just with all their industry knowledge. And that's about it. We talked about marbles, also just the general funding model about, obviously a lot of the buildings need a large amount of renovation work, and who's going to pay for it, and what is the upfitting costs, and how is that going to play into the decisions of who are the partners going to be for the future of the park. All right, Nick, I think that's all I got.
Thanks, Eric. That's wonderful and perfect. The other thing I'll add, just as an update, since Kate's not here, the input that this task force had on some of our upcoming building and site work. The site and building work is kicking off at different stages in contracting, but is moving forward, and is something we can update the committee on in January at our next full committee meeting. So just sharing that. Okay, that concludes our task force. I thank the Equity Task Force, but I'd like to thank all of our task force members for their involvement. Leadership is going to have a discussion about continuing on with task force, the form of them, the frequency of meetings, and the topics in between this time and our next meeting in January. So any input into folks that participated in task force, the efficacy of this time, how they can be improved and bettered, and also potential topics of additional study for this committee is always welcome and can be shared with Shauna, Jay, and Eric, as well as staff on this. So I hope you reach out, but a major thank you to the folks on all three task forces for their involvement, for their extra time. This was an additional meeting every month that was structured, plus some outside work. So a major thank you for that, and that time is recognized. Bill, I see I have a question.
Yeah, just a question. I understand that marbles was put through a process developed by UNC in terms of the things that it brought, and sort of has that evaluation scale been shared with the group as a whole? I may have missed that.
Yeah, so this, Eric, I could step in and then I'll pass it over to you. This was a draft tool that we kind of beta tested. There is a formal analysis of the feasibility of marbles that is occurring, Bill. So this was an early step, kind of a due diligence piece that happened internal to the committee. The tool is not in a final form. I don't believe it was shared as a draft to the full committee at this point. Eric, anything to add there?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. It was shared to the task force. I don't know if it's in the share drive, the very early version, like the very first version we got. But basically, it's like a different weighted score for like 12 different things that fit the master plan's kind of definition of what we're looking for. You know, and marbles passed pretty easily, to be honest, just because, you know, of what marbles is and what plaza and play is. But it's very preliminary. You know, it's just our recommendation that we agreed with it anyway.
Eric, that's a good point. Bill, it is most likely in our shared folder. We have a separate task force folder for each one of our task forces, and I'm sure it's uploaded in that document. So that should be accessible for the full committee.
Okay, I'll take a look. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah. Let me know if you need help finding it.
I might. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Continuing on, I want to bring up a topic. We are nearing the end of the first full year of functioning with this committee. If folks remember, when we established this committee, we split and segmented our group into three different categories of term length, 1, 2, and 3 year terms. And we have 14 members of this group who were either selected in or assigned a one-year term. And I sent an email today to those of you who have a one-year term with a reminder of that. The process is that if you are interested in serving a second term, terms moving forward will be 3 years. Then you are able to serve a second term even after the conclusion of your first term. Jay and Shauna, as the chair and vice chair of this committee, will be leading the process for having conversations with members at the end of their term, and the terms officially end at the end of the year. So they will be reaching out to folks in the next week or two to start scheduling a short conversation about continuing on, but also your experience as a committee member. It's a good time to have with our chairs and kind of one-on-one focus time to hear from the committee. So I hope folks will take them up on that opportunity. I'd also like to open this up as a good point for all of our committee members to think through our involvement, think through our ability to be, to dedicate time to this committee. As we know, things are changing and priorities and capacity changes, and we're always open to hearing about that, having a conversation. And like I said, Jay and Shauna are going to be leading those conversations. So if anyone whose situation has changed or have additional questions, please feel free to reach out to them. You should have their contact. I'd like to pass it to Trey. I saw that Trey has joined. Trey is, as we know, staff at the Conservancy Community Engagement Manager. I've asked him to overview our events in the next couple months, but also give a highlight on the powwow, which he is managing and leading, which is a significant amount of work and also something we're extremely excited about. So Trey, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, so we have a series of exciting events coming up. Yeah, we have a series of exciting events coming up. As y'all probably heard about the Legacy Committee series earlier. We also have the Intertribal Powwow coming up, which I will go over a little bit later. November 6th, we have Diwali Mandala street painting. That's going to be in the parking lot in front of the Flower Cottage. We're working with VAE and North Carolina Asians American Together. Diwali is an Indian festival that we celebrated last year at the park. And North Carolina Asians American Together are going to reach out to the Indian community to prioritize them signing up for chalk mandala painting in the parking lot. As well as we're going to reach out to our 46 Indian leaders that we have connected with in the past to make sure we prioritize outreach in the Indian community. Then Nights of Lights will be taking over the park as soon as all of this is over. It's going to be a little longer this year. It's going to start November 26th, all the way until Christmas Eve. It's exciting. And of course, y'all probably heard about a small little thing called Dreamville. Don't know if y'all heard of it before, but it's 2 days this year. I think it's just, I don't think it's gonna bring out a lot of people, but maybe about 50,000 per day. Not a lot for the park. Nick, do you have the slide up with the powwow poster? All right, so in these pictures right here, you have Patrick Green and Olivia Richardson. They are our head female and male dancers for the powwow this year. The powwow will be October 30th, and we partnered up with the Triangle Native American Society, the North Carolina Museum of History, the City of Raleigh Museum, and the Mexican Consulate for this. The Triangle Native American Society helped us identify a lot of people on our powwow planning committee, as well as possibly partner us up with some other activations that'll be at the park. And also they've been our partner with the land blessing. It was their suggestion to do the land blessing and the land acknowledgement last year that we worked alongside of. The Powwow Planning Committee has identified everyone to be part of this powwow. One big thing that I love about this project is that this is an event that was planned by Native people, a group of 5 Indigenous community organizers and a representative from the Museum of History. And that is just supported by the City of Raleigh and the Conservancy. So this is all Native ran. We had right down to the sound is being ran by Troy Richardson. Our videographer is native. This is completely native ran, native created, and just supported by us and our partners. We have Stony Creek and Southern Eagle as our host drum, and an invited drum is War Paints, Smoky River. And our MC is Sandon Jacobs, who is actually part of the Powwow Planning Committee, as well as Olivia Richardson, our head female dancer. This will be a day where we get to highlight over 20 native vendors coming from across the state, from Cherokee to Hollister, North Carolina, are coming. And basically all our vendors are indigenous business owners that sell from jewelry to candles to blankets to t-shirts and pottery. You'll get to also experience activations that teach you things from the NC Museum of History, who have partnered up with Sonora Lynch, who did the gift at UNC Chapel Hill. They will be making clay turtles at their tent that anybody can come in there and sign up to make clay turtles throughout the day. The City of Raleigh Museum will be providing information on evidence of indigenous populations using Dix Park in pre-colonial Raleigh. And then the Mexican consulate is a very exciting partner who is going to have a tent there to talk about Mexican indigenous cultures. And they will have 30 minutes in the programming that will include Aztec dancers and the showcasing of some indigenous Mexican artists in the area, including Cornelio Campos. Yeah, and the main thing about a powwow is it's an opportunity for us to celebrate, to sing, to drum, to dance. There is a competitive nature to our powwow, but there is also going to be intertribal dancing and just celebration of our culture to showcase our living culture. So we have a dance competition that will feature categories from grass, traditional, fancy, jingle, and it's an opportunity for non-natives to learn what those dances are and the difference between those dances. And the Conservancy will be providing cash prizes to the winners, which will be judged by an all-native judging panel. That's going to be from basically pre-registration to dance. It starts at 10 a.m., but the event starts around 11:30 and will go on until 6:30. We have special performances by Charlie Lowry and Alexis Rihanna, who were both like American Idol contestants, but also great independent artists on their own, and they're part of the Lumbee tribe. So I'm excited to showcase their talents as well. So it should be an all-day event that really is really immersive experience, a learning experience and a celebration for all people. So.
Awesome, Trey. I think I can speak for the group. We're super excited for this. This is a significant amount of work. And I know we're in the final home stretch here. Very excited, and thanks for joining us. Any questions, any additional comments from the committee about our upcoming events?
Trey, I messaged you a question.
How far away does from NC does the powwow dare? Is there?
It's supposed to be draw.
Draw? Oh, okay.
Draw.
Okay, sorry. I'm not sure, but I know we have signups right now. We really won't know completely until day of, because dancers will be able to register the day of. But I've had vendors coming out from Cherokee, from Lumberton, from Halifax County. I have dancers who are coming from the same area. So they're coming from all over North Carolina. I want to say from coast to the mountains. And that's what I hope that will happen. I guess we won't really have a good measure until day of.
Do you know if there are people from other states surrounding North Carolina?
I don't think so. There is one person who's out from a tribe from New York, but they live in North Carolina. So yeah. And I will say I will be meeting with the Powwow Planning Committee tomorrow to identify volunteer shifts. We might need volunteers, or we will need volunteers that day. And I will be sending out an email to everyone if you're interested in volunteering and helping out set up the morning of, because I'm going to need help with 20 vendors in the morning.
Thanks, Trey. Agree with Dr. Paylor. Fantastic slate of events scheduled for the next couple months. I have one final item for us tonight. I've asked Erica to join us. Erica was our note taker and support for the first 9 months of this committee. When she left, her final meeting was this past meeting, and I overlooked saying thanks to her. So I asked her, I roused her from her evening to join us and just recognize her today. And Erica, thank you for your time. If you ever looked at our meeting minutes, she did not miss a single word of any meeting that we have had to date, which is a feat. So Erica, last thing, I know I'm late on this. I saw a note that you are an outstanding senior from in graduation in May. So congrats there. She was a major help. Erica, what are you doing these days?
I am in Knoxville, Tennessee, doing a year of service with AmeriCorps, working at an elementary school that has a permaculture garden and doing some environmental education there. So it's super exciting to be here. Super cool to see this meeting and not have to be frantically typing during it. But I definitely miss Dix Park. I would love to come to all of these events. But I love that. I mean, I love that it's continuing in the same way that it's been continuing. And I hope to come back and see it when, when Plaza and Play gets running and just visit for events and everything. I love the parks.
Well, thank you, Erica. And yes, we'll see you when you move back to Raleigh eventually. With that, I'd like to close this evening. I think it was a very different meeting. It was not planning or project heavy. It had another element and bend to it. So I appreciate everyone's time. It's great to see you folks. Look for a recap email from me. And also, as we said, we have a number of awesome things happening at the park. So we hope to see you out there and hope you all have a good rest of your week. And we'll see you next time.